Good afternoon, ladies and gents. This is Terrell speaking. Welcome back. We are on our next build. This car just came in. It's an 04 WRX, I believe. It's 6-speed swapped, and the motor somebody built and then sat somewhere for quite a while. And he got it to start, idled okay, and then immediately in break-in tune, I guess it spun a rod bearing, and it sounds pretty terrible. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the oil pan off. We're gonna see how it looks on the inside, and get this build started. Hopefully just do a bearing and a new crank, but well, I guess a new rod and a new crank and the new bearings. And then see what else needs to be done. Already got this oil pan started. They already took it off once, but I am currently removing the rest of it. It's just one bolt left right there, and this thing should be off in a moment. All right, initially looking in here, not the worst I've seen, but definitely some shininess. Inside of here, we got a nice oil pickup and a baffle. I'm gonna go ahead and take those things off, see what rod spun or what happened in here. All right, looking at this, it has a good O-ring there, and the oil pickup has a good O-ring, so it probably wasn't an oil issue there. Putting this all on the table. And then we just have this baffle, which I think has a bolt there and a bolt there left. All right, initial impressions. Let's see here. Number 3, good. Number 2, tight. Number 1, I'm sorry, number 4, tight. I can't really see in there very well, but they actually all feel okay from this perspective. I'm gonna have to pull this apart, I guess, after all, and see what spun and what happened here. Well, I just spun it over by hand, and my initial current impression is I think this might have actually somehow spun a main bearing on the crank. Just, it spins over terribly. The rods all feel okay, but obviously I'm gonna get into this and pull the rods off and actually figure out what's going on. But to just begin this video, my initial thought is probably a main bearing somehow went out, because it feels very gritty. I don't like how it feels. Also, I just pulled the valve cover off this side. Definitely has head studs, sorry. And it looks like GSC cams. Got the yellow coating on these guys. These things are definitely bigger than stock. So that's pretty cool. All right, it's got the timing covers off, and it's looking a little bit strange in here. There's tons of belt material. Like it's been, I mean, almost like just disgusting in there. Everything looks new at least. I'm gonna see what exactly is causing this rubbing. If it's one of these side pulley pieces or guides. Sorry, or something's going on here, kind of weird. You can see over here for some reason, the belt was grinding into this timing cover pretty aggressively too. I'm gonna go ahead and pull these gears off and see, I guess, if I can figure out why it's doing this. All of these guys are pretty much right on the marks. It's a little bit low, but they're all on the marks at least. All the gears are on correctly. All right, crank gear came off nicely, but there's belt everywhere. It's grinding super hard into here. I assume it was placed on there way too tight, and then it didn't have enough time to pull back out, so it was just rubbing really bad. A little bit there too, but anyhow, I'm gonna keep pulling this thing apart. Did it off camera, but pulled the turbo off. We have a nice up pipe with a precision external wastegate, and I believe it's an FP red turbo. Beautiful size. Good looking setup. Now it's off. Just got intake manifold to take off, and then I can get these heads off. All right, off camera, I just pull all the bolts out for the intake manifold, and then do the coil packs on the bottom side. So next I'm gonna take off just the electrical connectors in the front, and then the rear, and I believe, let's see if it has coolant line still. It does not, so they're deleted. I'm just gonna take off the coolant line here, and then PCV is already disconnected, so this intake manifold should be off in just a second. Now I found another issue. There's no gasket between the TGV, or the intake spacer and the intake. And it looks like this is pretty stuck by the coolant crossover. And there's no gasket underneath there either. So that should have probably been leaking on both sides. All right, intake manifold is off. Now I'm going to pull these cam caps off, pull the cams off, and then pull the head studs off and pull this head off next. All right, pull the cams off. And they do in fact say GSC. Upside down, we can see right there, so that's good to know. Just pull all the head studs off. I'm gonna pull this head off in a second, see how she looks underneath. First impressions, You can see it looks like it is chamber matched. It looks pretty dang well machined. Head looks amazing. Looks like there's basically 0 mileage on this. And then get the block and the same thing. The pistons look absolutely beautiful. Looks like this thing is basically turned on and off. That's about all. Pulling this head gasket off. I don't really see a brand on it. They look, could be Cometic, also could be cheap. I really don't know. But this block looks absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna go ahead and move some stuff around and see if I can figure out what's going on here with this sound. Apparently this thing had some knocking noises. I just pulled the driver's side valve cover off. Cam's obviously identical, looking good. And pull all the cam caps off. I'm gonna pull the cams off and then take all the headsets out, get this side out, or this head off. And then I guess we'll start taking the block apart and see which bearing spun. I did feel a little bit of looseness, and I believe cylinder 2, but I guess we'll have to actually pull the block apart and check it out. All right, pulled the other head off, and the bottom looks the exact same head-wise. Block looks great. Pistons don't have any movement, but I'm gonna still pull this thing apart and see if I can figure out which valve or which rod for sure broke. If I can do this on camera, just pull all the bolts out for the oil pump. I want to make sure everything looks good and kind of show you the initial pulling off on camera. To say Subaru Japan, so it is OEM. It's a weird or a little bit different looking oil pump, but oh, there's our issue. Look at that. Somebody forgot to put the oil seal in there. This thing had no oil pressure. Holy cow. I don't see an oil seal anywhere in there. Not in there. Yep. There's our issue. Someone forgot that oil seal right there. After further inspection, they also forgot to put the silicone on this. You see a silicone anywhere on this gasket maker? Anything at all? No. I don't understand how you can do that. I don't get that. Well, my thoughts is probably still the main bearing spun. I would assume with no oil pressure. It's probably gonna be a bad block, but we're gonna find out. I'm currently just pulling all the bolts off that hold the block together. You know, work on these ones next, and these guys. I want to point out also the knock sensor is backwards, so that's pretty cool. All right, I just pulled the engine off the stand. I pulled all the bolts out of the sides that hold it together. And I just pulled that piston pin hole cover off and that one. I gotta work on pulling the back two off, that one, and then pull the piston pins out, and then pull, I'm actually probably gonna keep the pistons in for now and then just separate the block. I'm gonna do that off camera and then just separate, and I'll show you on camera what I find. All right, just pulled the bolts off the back covers, and I'm gonna pop them off and make sure there's O-rings on these at least. See this guy, yep, remember that one. And this one, look at that, they actually silicone something. Awesome. Now I gotta pull that off and then the pistons out. All right, separating these things, and it looks like they did silicone in the middle, at least. Just nice and easy, prying this thing loose. Want to see if everything's spun or how it looks on the inside. All right, immediate reactions. None of these look terrible. Okay. All feel all right, actually. The crank might have actually survived middle-wise. That's good news. We might have an okay block after all. None of these look like they actually spun. So this block might be usable. Let's see about these rods. I'm gonna have to take these rods off still, but I mean, there's literally actually no play. Try to do this on camera. I just broke all of them loose. One. All right, rod bearing number 4. Definitely starting to wear a little bit, obviously with no oil. Doesn't look bad though. Rod looks like it survived. Same with this side. Not too bad. All right, number 3. Let's see here. Rod looks great. Bearing looks great. And rod looks wonderful. All right, so that one survived. Rod number 2. This is the one I thought had some play. Definitely getting wear on there, but it doesn't look bad at all. Yeah, beautiful rod. And rod end cap. Looks great as well. All right, and lastly, number 1. This is gonna be the closest to the crank, or the front of the motor. Looks beautiful in there. And rod. Some silicone right there, otherwise she looks good. All the journals look good. I'm gonna get this all mic'd, but I think this crank actually survived. He might have just got lucky. It didn't run long enough to really hurt anything. But I mean, pulling all these off, definitely wearing in, but not bad. So he might have got lucky. We might be able to get this all mic'd by a machine shop and then rebuild. I'll update on how everything looks once the machine shop looks at it all, but I'm gonna drop the crank off. I think the block half's off to just make sure that everything looks smooth there. I don't know, I might drop the rods off as well, just to have them double check everything and then make sure we're good to build this back up. Thank you for watching, and next update will be probably getting these parts back, new bearings, and then actually putting this block together.